Next, as you mentioned, we'd like to go into the relationship with your Korean counterparts. So we'll start with Dave, then Creighton, and then Sean.
Certainly. My relationship was limited to the roughly 12 Cattousas that were in Charlie Company. The Cattousas were, for the most part, outstanding soldiers, but they were like the GI enlisted men. There were some better than others. I will say that they did everything that we did, and I enjoyed my relationship with the Catoosa soldiers. I did have a problem on 2 occasions with the language barrier, and I'm not saying it was the Catoosa's fault any more than it was my fault, but the language barrier on one night, and I didn't even tell you about the night the North Korean tried to dig under the barrier fence while I was in the mini tower with a Catoosa, but we fired on at the sound, and at any rate, eventually the quick reaction force came and pulled a sweep on the north side of the fence. And I take full blame for this. I did not explain to the Catoosa well enough that it was GIs, and he opened fire on the quick reaction force. I was able to disarm him real quickly, but at any rate, that was a problem that I had and I created myself. But luckily, no one was hit on the quick reaction force, and we did not find a body the next day, but we did find a hole halfway under the fence on the north side, but he did not get through.
Thanks, Dave. Great.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to just touch real quickly on something that Sean said that about the relationship with North Koreans up at Panmunjom. That's a wonderful thing for me to hear. They absolutely hated us in 1968. I had an opportunity to get to Panmunjom when I first arrived with the 3rd of the 23rd. And they forewarned me when we went into Panmunjom that if they grab you and try and drag you into the building, you better fight like crazy because you're gone if they get you inside that building. And the hate in their eyes when I would walk by a North Korean soldier back then was really frightening. So that's just want to say I'm happy to hear that things seem to be getting better. So much like David, my experience with the Cattousas was excellent. I thought they were, for the most part, really, really good soldiers. They were invaluable to me, translating the propaganda that was coming over the speakers in the DMZ at night. North Korea would broadcast over these big loudspeakers, and I didn't have a clue what they were saying in Korean, but the Cattousas could translate, and just made my job a lot easier and knew sort of what was going on. I thought they were mostly hardworking, dedicated soldiers. They were anxious to please. I never heard a Catoosa complain in my 13 months over there. And as platoon leader and a company commander, I never had a single Catoosa discipline issue. So I thought they were really outstanding. Also, I'd just like to shout out to how well I felt we were treated by the villagers in South Korea. When we'd go on winter exercises like an ORT or some kind of a training exercise, and we'd take a break and the column would be in a village somewhere, oftentimes the villagers would come out with pots of hot coals and just walk along the columns and let guys warm up just a little bit, because we all know how cold those Korean winters were. Anyway, I just thought the relationship and the support that the Cattousas as well as the South Korean villagers gave us was exceptional. My senior officers had always emphasized that we were visitors in Korea and we should act accordingly. I thought that was very, very sound advice, and I tried to pass that same philosophy along to my troops. And we had actually company classes at the time where we try and reinforce to the soldiers in the companies how we're supposed to behave to our Korean hosts. One area I think I'd like to touch on, I think I should have done a little bit better in, was I wasn't familiar with the officer ratings and the insignia on North Korea or South Korean officers' uniforms. And I had one rather embarrassing moment when I bumped into a South Korean officer who'd come to our company area. And I didn't know whether I should initiate a salute because I couldn't recognize his insignia. And I was always a little bit embarrassed that he never said anything, but I was kind of embarrassed that I didn't know whether I should initiate a salute, and I didn't want to disrespect him. So that's my experience with South Korean military.
Thanks, great. Sean?
Thank you, sir. I'm going to keep my answer short here, sir, because I really want to make sure we can get to question 4. My experience with my counterparts in Panmunjom could not have been better. And I say that because I think it was built on mutual respect. United Nations Command has the clear legal military authority in Panmunjom, but our presence there is small relative to the ROK Army. And they're no longer Katusas in Panmunjom in the JSA. It's an independent ROK Army battalion. So we had the authority, but they had the strength. And I think we both recognize that. And we recognize that things were changing fast in Panmunjom on the north side, and we had to work together. So I would describe my relationship with Colonel Lim Eugene and Colonel Chae Jin Young as brothers. I would do anything for them. I felt like they were ultimately loyal to the mission and UNC while also being perfectly loyal to their nation. They were in a tough spot with 2 real bosses, and they did a fantastic job. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
Thanks, Sean. I had extensive contact with our ROK counterparts over the years that I served in Korea. But one anecdote I'd like to, shortly after I arrived in Korea, about 3 days after I arrived in Korea, there was a command post exercise going that was ready to start, and they needed a liaison officer from the 2nd Infantry Division, US, to the 7th ROK Corps, which at that time was the Counteroffensive Corps. So with my 3 days of experience with the 2nd Division, I was tagged to be the liaison officer. Went trucked out to the ROK 7th Corps headquarters, went down into a bunker with 20 Korean officers all around the telephones. I learned my first word in Korean, Yobazeo. And from there, we got right into the exercise. Then it became time to go to chow. And we went down to the Korean officers mess hall and started to eat. And one of my ROK counterparts asked me, Davino, how long have you been in Korea? I said, oh, about 4 days. And he said, how do you know how to use chopsticks? And, you know, stupid me, the Army really didn't do a good job of preparing us. I said, well, I learned when I was in Japan. And all of a sudden, you know, I had no real idea about the long history between Japan and Korea. And they asked me, you know, how did I said, oh yeah, how did you like Japan? And I said, oh, it was really nice. People were very friendly over there. And for the rest of the exercise, there was a little bit of tension between me and my ROK counterparts. But over the years, I grew to respect the ROK Army and really had a great relationship with to include serving as the division's liaison officer to the 79th ROK Army Infantry Regiment during Team Spirit '86.